Welcome back to this sporadic series of battle reports with me, Brother Danny.
And me, Brother Peachy.
This time,
Today we have Dwarves versus Goblins. I shall be taking the Goblin army as shown on the left.
and I'll be commanding the Dwarven army as shown on the right.
Right then, this is what I played. I am taking an army led by none other than Grom the Paunch. That's him in the centre with his mighty wolf chariot, supported by a Goblin Big Boss on a gigantic spider and a level 3 Goblin Shaman. There were no magic items apart from the kit that Grom usually comes with, which is his Axe of Grom and his Lucky Banner and his regeneration abilities. The Night Goblin Great Shaman was level 3, and I couldn't afford anything else for him. And the Goblin Big Boss was on a gigantic spider with a potion of foolhardiness. The rest of the army was made up of 29 Night Goblin Spears with full command and a netter, and 3 Fanatics hiding at the back there. Also, I had 2 units of 6 Goblin Wolf Riders with spears and short bows, 12 Goblin Spider Riders with just spears, 23 squig herds of assorted goblins and cave squigs, and a bit of artillery. Now I had a Goblin Rock Lobber and 2 Goblin Doom Divers, and to tie it all off, I had 2 Mangler Squigs chomping away. So that was my all-Goblin army. Brother Danny.
What I brought to the table was a new one for me, the Dwarves. It was my first time looking through the Codex, and I should mention that we're playing good old-fashioned 8th edition Warhammer here. So I had a bit of a look through to familiarise myself with what I could take, and in the end I thought what I'd go for was an all-missile army. The Dwarves are fairly handy in close combat even if they're only packing crossbows, and I thought a good amount of flak for the Goblins to advance through should thin them out nicely. So we took a horde of 30 quarrelers, or well, 27 quarrelers, and then filled that out with some characters. There was a lord bearing the master rune of adamant, doubling his toughness up to 10. He also had a crossbow to join in with all the shooting. There was a thane, the battle standard bearer. He had a treble rune of slowness on his banner that would make the unit even harder than usual to charge. And finally, there was a runesmith with a rune of spell breaking. Backing that up was a unit of 16 thunderers, gunner dwarves with a full command there. And then we had what I hoped was to be the crowning part of the army, a full set of war machines almost. A grudge thrower, a cannon armed with a rune of burning, a bolt thrower with the rune, Flaxen's rune of shooting or something like that, something that gives you a plus to flying animals, just in case there were any, and a flame cannon. And that was my lot.
Indeed, and this was how you were set up.
Yes, in true sporting dwarven fashion, I clung to the back edge of a corner, denying one flank and sitting with my my firing arcs overlapping as much as possible. I put the flame cannon a wee bit forward so to be able to shoot as quickly as I possibly could get it to fire, and everyone else would just be shooting away as the goblins turned up.
And I didn't have the advantage of being so compact, so my army was spread across the board, ready to take on whichever corner the dwarves ended up in. So nice and central was Grom in his chariot, letting his banner bearer Niblet is also the battle standard, so he had his leadership and his BSB all in one place. On either side, he had the Night Goblins, who were bodyguarding the Great Shaman, and the Cave Squigs on the other side. They, in turn, were flanked by a Mangler Squig each. And on the extreme left, I had my unit of Spider Riders and 1 unit of Hobgoblin Riders. On the right, at a shot, is another unit of the Wolf Riders. I had my Goblin Big Boss and his gigantic spider occupying a building somewhere in the centre, and then I had my 3 war machines at the back, ready to rain down their death. And then before we rolled for the first turn, I did some vanguarding moves. So I sent forward my 2 fast cavalry on the left flank, charging up. I could see the dwarves were now in a far corner, so I had no choice but to try and sweep around them, so they had to get some progress on. On the right flank, however, my Goblin Wolf Riders used their vanguard movement to shuffle back a little bit. I took them out of range of the Quarreler Horde, because I didn't want any of that business until I could get all my units in place to try and overwhelm them with targets. It looked like quite a solid anvil, and I wasn't happy about taking it on piecemeal. So with that in mind, we rolled for the first turn, and it was awarded to me, so I was keeping on going. First thing that happened was my Night Goblin unit started squabbling. But as luck would have it, they started squabbling in the right direction. They were so eager to get going, they charged forward and still had a movement left. So they were making some good progress before it even began. Everyone else passed their animosity, no worries. And with that in mind, I started moving forward. As you can see, it's a nice sweeping over. It looks like almost organized for a greenskin army. The fast cavalry are coming up on the side, send the Mangler Squigs forward. The Mangler Squig on the hill was quite a bounder. He always scored far above average on his bounces, and he was really going for it. Again, the Night Goblins moved forward a little bit more. Grom carried it up. The Squigs went forward. I think the only one that I held in reserve were the other unit of Wolf Riders, because I still didn't want them to get shot at. And you'll see the Goblin on the gigantic spider is still hiding in the building. He does move forward. He was just so well camouflaged, I missed him. Bit of magic now. I rolled very poorly. I think it was only 3 power dice, so I only had a chance of getting one spell off. With a magic mushroom, I managed to fire it off. It was the Night Shroud, which is generally useless, but in this case, given I'm facing a lot of shooting army, it was quite handy. So I threw the Night Shroud on that. I should also mention I had Sneaky Stabbing, and I had what was my other spell?
It was Itchy Nuisance, and you had the Vindictive Glare as well.
That was it. I rolled the Night Shroud, the Itchy Nuisance, and the Vindictive Glare. And the Itchy Nuisance, given it reduces the enemy's initiative and mobility, seemed completely useless, so I swapped that out for Sneaky Stabbing. So I've got Sneaky Stabbing, Night Shroud, and Vindictive Glare. Night Shroud was cast on the Goblins. So that's my magic. Now for the fun part. Here comes the shooting.
This was the bit I was looking forward to most, in fact. I was looking forward to seeing an assembly of greenskin war machines slowly dissolving under their own incompetence.
Absolutely. Now, I did rather well with the hits. I managed to land on target, helped quite a lot by the fact that Doom Divers can adjust, although my first hit smacked the cannon and then bounced straight off it. Not to worry, I've got another stone thrower hit, and he destroyed it completely. So the rock lobber came in, and that just wipes the cannon off the board. Lovely. I thought a nice bit of counter battery fire would be a good way to open up.
Tremendous start. I was delighted.
And I was so happy, I thought, well, I'll ignore the war machines and give the Quarrelers something to think about. So the second Doom Diver flew over there and wiped out 5 Quarrelers. All gone. That'll do nicely. Probably wasn't enough to cause a panic test, although with a Dwarf Lord in there, panic wasn't likely to be happening.
No, indeed, I wasn't panicking at all. We all stood fast, firm in our faith in the battle plan, which was to stay exactly where we were and shoot at anything that got into range.
And having said that, there was no close combat, so it was over to the Dwarves.
No close combat, indeed, and no charging, no movement at all from my troops, or magic, because we don't believe in it. So there was just a bit of shooting. Now, this is when it really started to kick off. I thought, okay, I'm already lagging a wee bit here. The enemy batteries have found our range, so we better get cracking on back with it. In fact, I actually was going to ignore the enemy batteries. My idea was to pick off things like the Mangler Squig and hopefully Grom with as much accurate battery fire as I could. But I was disappointed. See, what I hadn't invested in was any Master Engineers or Engineer runes. And that immediately started causing me problems when the Grudge Thrower misfired. They just got the thing pointing the wrong way round and, shooting back at our own hold. So while they were slowly wheeling it back round the other way, I thought I'd try a bit of bolt thrower fire. Oh, well, it wasn't a bolt thrower, in fact. It was straight to the flame cannon. I thought a boosted flame cannon shot, I could land that clean in the middle of the goblins, maybe wipe up some of the Night Goblin spears or the Squig herders. It wasn't to be, it was another misfire. And this one cost me the entire fire thrower immediately. The bolt thrower also had a peck at something, but the bolt went wide. I think I tried to shoot a Mangler Squig. That was it, a very fast turn for the Dwarves. Nothing much to do except shoot. And we did that very badly. Both Thunderers and Quarrelers were out of range of anybody.
Yep, I was pretty happy to weather that, considering it cost you 1.5 war machines in the bargain. However, having such a polyglot unit of goblins, they started to squabble amongst themselves. So I failed an animosity test for the forest goblins, who immediately decided to pick a fight with the hobgoblins. So they started lobbing their spears and firing arrows at each other, and the forest goblins lost 1 of their members, and the hobgoblins lost 2 of their wolf riders, which, thinking about it, was pretty good, because it meant that the other hobgoblins wouldn't be suffering from animosity anymore. Their unit was too small. But they were both stuck and going nowhere, and had picked off more of each other than the Dwarves had managed so far. So that was my left wing. Everything else seemed to be moving forward quite nicely. The Mangler Squig again bounded forward. We had the Night Goblins, Cave Squigs and Spears moving up. Grom was in the centre, and along comes the Hobgoblins as well. So the jaws of the trap are closing, despite the fact there's still a bit of squabbling going on.
All exactly where I wanted them.
Rolled very highly for the magic this phase, and I seem to do quite well with the spells. So Night Shroud was the first one I cast off. I indeed tried to cast off the boosted version, now I found out about it, that didn't just affect one unit, it affected everything within 12 inches. So that would have been pretty much half the army would be counted in soft cover, so that would be very nice.
Well, I wasn't having any of that. I cracked out the rune of spellbreaking at this point, using it up to deny the opportunity here.
Indeed, foiled again, but there was plenty more dice to cast, so I got myself a Vindictive Glare, which also went off. And that vindictively hit the unit of Quarrelers, killing 3 of them and popping a wound on the Runesmith, who'd been so unpleasant as to counter my spell in the first place.
He'd done his best to dispel this as well, and in fact his magic resistance managed to knock a couple of casualties off that initial hit, but yeah, we're going to have to take that on the chin again.
The Quarreler horde diminishes still. Now, I thought I'd make it add a bit more by lobbing a rock lobber over it. Now, the rock lobber scored a direct hit. This was something of a trend I was getting here. However, the dwarven armor was so good and my attempts to wound were so bad, only the dwarf directly underneath the rock squashed. Everyone else managed to avoid the flying chips quite happily. So another dwarf dead there. The Doom Diver decided down with a pop. He took off 3 dwarves with his hit. I think this one, he needed quite a bit of adjusting, but that big old wingspan of the model seemed to really plant him in there. And the second Doom Diver came in and he killed another 3 dwarves as well. So I think that takes off the whole back rank. It's a horde no more. And they're really starting to feel a pinch now of all this artillery landing right on their heads.
We were
it was now back to the dwarves.
It's still, I was struggling to land any hits here. Again, we stayed absolutely still, didn't do any magic, nothing moving. And we just let rip with what missiles we could. We started off with a bolt thrower, and this time, although we managed to hit one of the Mangler Squigs, it didn't even scratch him. So that was disappointing. We opened up with the Thunderers, trying to take out the other Mangler Squig before it can get anywhere. We managed to chip him a bit, but very, very scantily, really. The range was telling against me. I wasn't landing the hits I needed. Now, we made up for a bit with the Quarrelers, who finally managed to pick out Grom. And this was quite nice. We could almost have done for him straight off. It's not that he's not a big, tough chariot and all. In his regeneration, I thought this is a bit of a risk to shoot at him at all. But as it happened, we got some nice hits on him. 2 wounds off the general himself and 1 off his chariot. That left him looking a wee bit sketchy for later, I was hoping.
I believe it was the other way around. It was 2 off the chariot and 1 off Grom. So the chariot's rattling around on its final wound. Grom has 2, and despite the chariot having a ward save and Grom having regeneration, they were all peppered with crossbow bolts, and I couldn't do a thing about it.
I managed another rock lob. Oh no, the rock lobber was still slowly pointing itself around in the right direction at this point, so it didn't manage anything. And that, once again, was the end of my turn.
My turn 3 now, and I think in this time there was no animosity. They all did what they were supposed to do, so clearly getting very excited about this. I began with that cowardly unit of Wolf Riders on the right flank who'd been hanging back, avoiding fire. They now ran forward, changed their formation so they were 3 wide, and basically planted themselves right under the nose of the rock lobber. So there was no guesses as to where they were going next. But I'll put them there because I thought, well, maybe the Crawlers left to shoot them. If they're going to kill anything, better be those units, make them a bit sacrificial. Elsewhere, the 2 Mangler Squigs bounded forward. The one who'd been wounded managed to get off the hill and get in a reasonable position, but the other one, who'd been making great strides, continued to do so and landed just an inch short of the bolt thrower. But actually, just an inch short was okay, because it meant in his next go, he was all poised to go right up that dwarf line. So we'll see what happens there. Elsewhere, the Wolf Riders, the Spider Riders, the Night Goblins, Grom himself, and the Cave Squigs all started to move forward, getting ready to charge. It was now my 3rd turn. I still hadn't got within what I thought was charge range because of that triple rune of slowness. I'd be losing a bit of points off it. So I thought I need to get really close to be absolutely sure, because I don't want to be taking any standing shoots and casualties unless I had to. And you can see on the hill the final Night Goblin Big Boss and Gigantic Spider found himself squeezed out. There was no room for him anymore. So to make himself more useful, he started speeding round the army and hoping to get in a bit of clear space on the right. So that was how I moved. Another pretty good roll with the dice, and I managed to cast my boosted Night Shroud this time. So all the units within 12 inches were taking soft cover, so that would be quite nice.
I was not happy about that. I did my best to dispel it, but it just wasn't to be.
So Night Shroud on the Goblins boosted over there, and still had enough changeover to shoot off a Vindictive Glare on the Crawlers. Only one Dwarf lost, but every little bit helps, and it was nicely vindictive. And I clearly had enough dice to throw a sneaky stab in on the wolves. I was clearly bossing this magic phase. So the wolves got a sneaky stab in. That was pretty much to give them armor piercing for their bows. There wasn't a lot left I had to cast on, as it was all close combat stuff. But I thought, well, why not? I've got the dice. And back to my favourite thing, which was the artillery. It didn't let me down. Let's start off with a rock lobber. It landed square and killed 5 dwarves. 5 of the crawlers now dead. Now, at this point, the crawler unit was getting so small, I thought I'd better move to the thunderers because there's more of them. So I sent a doom diver over there. He only managed to clip off 1 thunderer. And the second one also managed to clip off 1 thunderer. So less effective artillery, but now moving on to the other unit of missile troops. It is now the turn 3 for the dwarves.
Now, obviously, there was a great big target looking right down the barrel of my guns here, and I was going to have to do something about it. The only unit I could do anything about it with was the bolt thrower, which wheeled in position and launched, and I hit him, and I wounded him, but I didn't take him down. So that was looking pretty bad for me. I wasn't looking forward to seeing what that was going to do, as it ripped through the entire army in one fell bounce.
Yeah, I thought the dwarf with a telescope would have had a slightly better aim on the Mangler Squig there.
It's not a close quarters weapon, really. You need the long arcs. Not that that had helped me earlier, mind. So we managed to get a bit of shooting off on the other Mangler Squigs. All the Thunderers managed to clip some wounds off that. I think that did for him, in fact.
Yep, he was completely dead after that. Blasted away.
So that was him out of the question. And then the Quarrelers. Now, I didn't really want to waste my time shooting at the wee Wolf Rider unit there, but really there wasn't much else I could shoot at with any great effect. Everybody else was still at long range, and they were night shrouded. So when it came down to it, we picked off about half the Wolf Riders, and the other 3 ran off. That was end. Back for me again. No magic, no movement. Sticking to the plan, despite the fact that it really wasn't looking like it was going to work out well for me.
Turn 4. I think by this point, the running Wolf Riders had managed to flee close enough to Grom to use his leadership. So they managed to rally themselves. So they turned it right back around and had a good look at the unit again. But now the random movement. This was the part I was looking forward to. The Mangler Squig. The Mangler Squig bounced into the crossbow and the bolt thrower. Came out the other side, of course, hit the Thunderers, who came out the other side, and of course hit the Stone Thrower, who came out the other side, and hit the Crawlers. So what happened was 2 of the crew were lost from the Bolt Thrower, 8 were lost from the Thunderers, 2 more from the Grudge Thrower, and 3 from the Crawlers. So that was a hefty toll on the Thunderers. Sadly, neither one of the war machines was killed, but I'll be taking that anytime. That was quite a bit of devastation for my Mangler Squig there.
No, that was horrific. I mean, if I had any idea that I was still going to be able to pick off some units on their way in and before I could have to deal with them in hand-to-hand, that really crushed them.
I think that's what happens when you get a Mangler Squig on the end of your gun line.
Aye, sure enough.
So then regular movement came, and I nudged my Night Goblins forward, and what did I have hiding there but a couple of Fanatics? So I started throwing them out as well. The first Fanatic rolled very well. He got to the unit of Thunderers, killed 2 more of them, by which point I thought I'll take a chance and see if I can lop off that Bolt Thrower as well. And sure enough, the Fanatic made it over there and managed to completely destroy what was left of the Bolt Thrower. The third Fanatic wasn't so enthusiastic. He just wandered right in front of my unit and stayed there in a rather annoying position. But once again, that'll do very nicely.
And he still wasn't done yet.
And I still wasn't done yet. I think I managed to cast off Night Shroud again, boosted, and Sneaky Stabbing again. So managed to have quite a good magic phase on top of that. With enough left over for a Vindictive Glare. Now, I think the Vindictive Glare, there was plenty of targets to choose from, but given it's only strength 3, my likelihood of hitting anything was low, and I thought best thing to do it is throw lots of numbers at the rock lobber. So I did the boosted Vindictive Glare on the Grudge Thrower, managed to get 2 hits coming in there. which I needed 6s for. So 2 6s on there. Only to kill 1 crew member, but there was an armor save to be made.
He got halfway there, which left him halfway dead, unfortunately, and that was the last of my war machines gone. Very disappointing showing from all 4 of them, really. I had actually managed to get 1 shot off with the rock lobber in the last turn that I forgot to mention that would have crushed Grom had it landed anywhere near him. So overall, in fact, I think Goblin Animosity had done more damage to the Goblin army than any of my war machines managed.
Yeah, sadly, a big goose egg for the war machines. Now, my war machines, on the other hand, were doing quite well. I think I began with just a bit of shooting, so I decided my Wolf Riders would take out that troublesome Goblin in my way, so they let fly with their arrows and shot down one of their own. Then it comes time for the Goblin war machines. I sent the Rock Lobber over to what remained in the Thunderers. He hit everything, including my Fanatic, although the Fanatic got away, but 2 more Thunderers were dead, which just left the Champion and the Standard Bearer in the unit. Doom Divers again went for their favourite target, hit the Quarrelers, took out 5 of them. Something of a pattern developing there.
Aye, we were down to the bare bones of the unit now. It was the Banner Bearer and the 3 heroes was all that was left.
Indeed, although I think actually the second Doom Diver may have actually missed in a very rare occasion. He sailed over and did absolutely nothing. But it was the Dwarf's turn. Was it now 6? The Dwarf's turn 4.
So as you can see, we've still got every chance. So at this point, I mustered what gunpowder I had left to me, and we all aimed for Grom. The plan here being, if I can take him down, then maybe a wave of panic will surge through the Goblins, and they'll all just leave us in peace. As you might have expected from my dice rolling by now, this wasn't to be. We did manage to hit him a couple of times, but it didn't hurt him at all.
And it was back to the Goblins' turn. Animosity struck again. I think it was this time it was the Night Goblins got quite animous and started shouting insults at the brethren over the cave squigs. Much damage was avoided though. I think it was only the loss of a single cave squig and a herder, and the Night Goblin spears got away unscathed, but they were both stuck where they are. The cave squigs were pretty much stuck because they were so far behind the line. The Night Goblins, well, they'd done their bit, but I think as you can see, I could probably afford to spare a couple of regiments from what was coming next.
It was quite sporting, really, in a way.
Indeed it was. The 2 Fanatics who were left spun around a little bit worryingly close to my units, but sadly failed to hit each other, so they were still in play somewhere. But I'd thought time for a bit of close combat, led by Grom. So Grom and the smaller unit of Wolf Riders decided to charge in on the Thunderers. The 2 Thunderers let rip and managed to kill a Wolf Rider, so only 2 Wolf Riders came in, but then so did Grom, and I do believe impact hits did for the lot of them.
Aye, they never even got a chance to swing.
No, well, that's probably skipping ahead there. So what I also planted was my my Goblin Big Boss on the Gigantic Spider. He'd come all the way around and again parked himself in front of the Quarrelers. I reckon I could weather a couple of bolts from them, but I thought let's threaten them with something to keep them occupied with. And also to keep them occupied was more artillery. So the Doom Diver came in. I think he managed to kill the Runesmith there and put a wound on the BSB. I think the other 2 artillery pieces went wide, partly because the units were now so small it was getting quite hard to hit them. And as I mentioned, the impact hits took out the unit Thunderers before I even got a chance to swing an axe. So Grom and the Wolf Riders just reformed to face the 3 remaining Dwarves on the board.
Finally, I had them all exactly where I wanted them. Now, I could have just stuck to the plan and stayed put, really, and that wouldn't have been the end of the world, but I thought, do you know what? My shooting at this point is going to be so ineffectual, given it's going to be 1 Lord and 1 Banner Bearer. No, it wasn't even that. There was a Banner Bearer left. So 2 crossbow bolts isn't going to do for anybody. So what I'll do is nobly advance on Grom and try and call him out in a close combat battle to the death. So we marched towards Grom and his chariot.
Marching from the Dwarves, it's happened.
Obviously putting me, right, ignoring that huge spider in front of me. And perhaps with retrospect, I should have charged him. But it is what it is. There we were. That was the end of my turn. No shooting, no magic, nothing.
Now the Goblins' 6th and final turn coming up. And I decided, in a very un-greenskin way, I would accept this challenge. I was feeling confident. And I thought, yeah, Grom can come in there. he's newly painted and he deserves a chance at the Dwarf Lord. So I held the Wolf Riders back because I thought they'd just give away easy combat resolution, and I sent Grom in the front, and also I sent the boss on the gigantic spider into the back. So the bit of a dwarf sandwich going on there.
Not entirely the kind of noble duel to the death one-on-one I had in mind, but close enough.
And as is traditional in my usual 6th turn of any game, I get overexcited in the magic phase and throw too many dice at a spell. I thought sneaky stabbing would be a great thing for the shaman to have, because he's coming on the back, he'll get extra, you get rerolls to hit and to wound, plus armor piercing, that'll be lovely. So I throw a couple of dice at it, and sure enough, my goblin hit a misfire. So my goblin shaman rolled the worst possible misfire. The large template went off in his regiment. 11 goblins flew into the air in tiny little bits. He lost a wound himself, but as a mercy, he did not get sucked into the warp. So
aye, we were all glad of that.
That's just the life of the goblin. But once again, causing 11 goblins, I think, is more than the dwarves managed the entire game. So not too bad for the goblin shaman there. There was no shooting, as I had engaged everyone by this point. I think I may have used my short bows to clean out some of the fanatics, but it wasn't important. So it was straight to the combat. And I believe this was the point where the Dwarf Lord issued a challenge.
He did, and Grom very sportingly even accepted. Now, this left the combat basically as a pair of hero-on-hero challenges. The poor old standard bearer there didn't make it past Grom's impact hits, as it turned out.
That was it. So they were fighting away with each other, and this triple rune of slowness was still in play, so all my guys would be striking last, so it was the dwarf's turn to go. Could he knock off Grom's final 2 wounds? He
did his best, and in fact he'd also soaked up a fair few impact hits on his way, and that Master Rune of Adamant really made him a very tough prospect. In the event, though, despite his hatred of the Greenskins, he just couldn't quite land the blows he needed. Grom's regeneration was a little bit much for me to get through, and I knocked another 1 wound off him, but that was all. At least the goblin failed to do anything back.
Yes, I couldn't get past the Rune of Adamant whatsoever, but yeah, the final wound was saved by regeneration, so it was already 1 up to the dwarf. However, the sneaky stabbing Spider Rider, with his potion of foolhardiness and all sorts of other things, managed to completely gobble up that last wound on the Thane, with, I believe, taking only 1 in return.
He did, that was right. I'm not even sure he did that. I think I whiffed my way through the combat. You might have taken a nick, but it wasn't enough to slow you down.
I think you're right, that wound counter might be for the Thane. So yeah, the goblin came through without a scratch. And so with the fact that the charge, the rear charge, the wounds caused, the impact hits, the banner, the BSB, the sneaky stabbing, all that ended up to a massive combat.
I even remembered, for one of the first times I've ever played you, to call a wag on your way in from Grom.
That was what I do. I called Grom special wag, so I got an extra 2 onto the combat res. So yes, that was the first only time I've done a wag, and it paid off. So it was -7 for the Dwarf Lord to take his leadership test.
And I might have had a Master Rune of Adamant, but I suddenly didn't have a Will of Adamant. So that was me running a whole 4 inches away from the incoming monstrous creatures.
And you may be surprised to learn he did not outpace a gigantic spider or a wolf chariot. So he was run down and making a clean sweep of the dwarves.
Now, I am proud to say that it might have been some time since we played 8th Ed. In fact, more than a year, I think. But I have clearly lost none of my talent and skill. A good, clean tabling, that's the kind of result I like to see.
Absolutely. It makes it very easy to clear away afterwards. So it was victory to the Goblins. The totting up the points, there was 1,850 to the Goblins for 314 for the Dwarves. Most, I think, was accounted for Mangler Squigs, and they managed to get Grom down to half wounds.
Well, we'll take what we can get.
But that was a good game. It was a good outing for Grom, and it's probably the first all-Goblin army I've played for a very long time. And I think their madcap antics can sometimes backfire, but I had a game where everything went right for me this time.
On the other hand, I had very much the opposite. In future, I think I would take the missile-heavy dwarves again, but I would maybe take 1 war machine less, and either invest that in a master engineer to get some rerolls on misfires, or possibly some better protective runes against missile fire myself. That Orcish artillery was just horrific. From start to finish, I was having Doom Diver after Doom Diver to the face, and we just didn't have the numbers to put up with that kind of battering.
Indeed, taking 2 Doom Divers can be quite brutal, as I learned from my last game, so maybe I'll give them a rest next time and try something different. But all in all, splendid game.
Good stuff. We'll see you again, probably in about a year's time.
Thank you, Brother Danny.
Thank you, Brother Peachy.
Oh, him there, with a 5.5 hat size, has the makings of a bloody hero.